But we're here with Timothy Thompson, and he's a graduate of the Hotchkiss School. They're here for the 60th anniversary of that program. Without further ado, here is Timothy Thompson.
Thanks, Walter. I'm glad you're doing this because this program is so special to me and clearly to all of the others who went through it because of the genuine love and concern and organized guidance. And that's the big thing. I'm a retired college professor, and I can tell you the organized way in which this thing was put together is the model that everybody should be using if they really want to help people.
Okay. Yeah, I'm surprised that they ended it in the late 70s. I'm not surprised, but such a program, if you look at the metrics of the people that came through the program, would you say that the majority of them went on to college, good schools, or how would you characterize that?
I actually looked into the origins of the program years ago, and what I discovered and what I constantly brag to my friends and family about is, according to the stats on the success rates and so forth, 86% of the folks of us who went through the program graduated college, not just went, but graduated, and went on to meaningful careers. And I dare defy anybody to come up with a more successful
success rate. 86%.
86%.
Wow. I mean, what college did you go to?
I got my bachelor's degree from Boston University, my master's degree from the University of Maryland, Park, and my PhD from Howard University.
Cool. And so what do you said that you retired previous college professor?
Yeah.
And what did you teach?
It's called Human Communication Studies, but that doesn't really tell you anything. It's really strategic communications. It's how to build a relationship with yourself first, and then with anyone else after that, which included understanding how you arrive at your decisions and conclusions, understanding how other people arrive at their decisions and conclusions, what are understanding the barriers that people have in their relationship and how to overcome them, how to negotiate, how to persuade.
Success rate, how do they say this now? They say 20% of your decisions affect 80% of your life. Is that 20%, 80-20?
I guess. I actually never think of things that way. I'm one of those folks who always is trying to look at what are my underlying motivations. So if they're going to be a hindrance to me actually getting the outcome I want, then I'm going to actually not make a decision and not form a conclusion until I see, do I want the influence of my bias here, or do I want the influence of my lack of knowledge here to end up messing up the overall outcome? So, I also taught, the kind of courses that I taught included training in critical thinking skills and information literacy skills. Those are highly related, right? So if your information literacy is talking about, deals with what kind of information do I need to have in order to make a decision about this thing?
Right.
Where am I going to get it from? And how accessible is it? And then from there, stage 2 is the critical thinking. Now, how am I going to use this thing in order to get the outcome that I want?
I told a lot of people that one of the most important courses that I took it in undergrad, was critical thinking. I think that should be mandatory for everybody.
Absolutely.
Because, you really can't really function properly without, thinking. You can't assume that whatever you read is right. You have to be able to go and, what do you call it? Sifting for gold. That's what they call it. When we go through some information, you take out the parts that, you don't think are relevant or whatever. Yet, you got more resources that you can use to prepare before you arrive at any type of conclusion.
Absolutely. It's interesting, too, because I'm totally on board when you say everybody should be taught this thing. The fact that everybody should be taught this is why this information is withheld from the working class and the poor. Because the more you understand critical thinking and apply it, the more invulnerable you are to the propaganda.
Right.
So they deliberately withhold this kind of information. I remember when my wife and I first got together in the late 70s, we went to a Gil Scott-Heron concert at Wesleyan College.
That's right. One of your classmates went to Wesleyan?
Yeah, I don't remember who it was. But
Larry Williams?
Yeah, I don't remember who it was.
Yeah.
But during the concert, I was like Gil's concerts because he mixed it in with social commentary, moving toward justice. And so during the session, he stopped playing and started talking a little bit. And he posed this question. I'll never forget it. He said, what reason do the people who really rule this country have to tell you what's really going on? And I remember one of the students there, it was a white male. He raised his hand. He looked all confident, that he had the answer. But then he stood up and he realized, I got nothing. That was one of the funniest things. Right? So I used to do life coaching work with inmates in Maryland, right? And Maryland, D.C. Also did some communication training in police departments too, cops in those spaces, because they want to be able to just do what they want to do a lot of times.
Yeah, you wouldn't even be able to get a shot on the trunk. Right. You forget about it. You decommission in a lot of those programs.
But I remember I was doing but I was friends with the dean of criminal justice in the institution that I retired from. I was a department chair, he was the dean and stuff, but I was in communication. He had a lot of contacts in the prison system and all that stuff. So he brought me in to work with some brothers who were just getting ready to transition out.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
So he brought me in to help them develop their decision-making skills so they wouldn't be so prone to recidivism, right? So I'm in there. They're eating that stuff up. The warden was a brother too, right? But they're eating that stuff up. He shut it down because they were responding so well.
Oh, you think he's working himself out of a job?
I guess that's what he was saying. Right? But he literally shut it down.
All right. So anyway, I think my final question is to you, as I did to the other, your colleagues, your classmates rather, was, contrasting, we celebrate 60 years of the Greater Opportunity Program. So we're talking about the mid-60s. And now we're in 2025, and there's a lot going on in the environment. And I just wanted your take on your observation from your experiences, and as to what's your take?
Okay, a program like the Go program is the only kind of thing that can see. For me, I'm a trauma therapist too, right? So I understand. When I help people out of all kind of, to be able to stabilize themselves under all kind of conditions and be very effective in their relationships, working with them. Because it's all about understanding your emotional flow, your emotional maturity, building emotional maturity, which takes a lot of work. It's one of the hardest things to do, but it's so important. And the kind of things that we have done, and the brothers who have come through a program like this, understand we all should focus our attention on our circle, on working diligently in our circle of influence instead of our circle of concern, right? Because a lot of people have their heads in phone screens and things like this, looking at social media, and they're getting barraged with information, but they don't know how to process it. Right, so they can't do critical thinking. And so when you help people get in touch with their own agency, right, you are helping them inoculate themselves against the current pandemic of psychosis here, because we're talking about a pandemic of narcissism and hatred that folks are deliberately trying to spread.
I never use that term. Yeah.
And this is a deliberate attempt to use the same playbook that the fascists used in that stuff.
Yeah, that's what I heard. In fact, a lot of parallels to, what the events leading up to World War II, and the same thing during the Civil War.
Right. You see, my training directly, I had the good fortune of directly studying those methods, and seeing how folks like Mussolini and Hitler and them set up the people and pulled them along with mostly disinformation. So I'm looking at this in real time, and I'm seeing exactly the same thing. Well, people like Stephen Miller, Steve Bannon, Stephen Miller's expertise is in the methods used to destroy his own ancestors, because he hates his own.
Jewish?
He's Jewish. Yeah.
Oh.
So, right. So he has self-hatred going on. So I'm looking at this stuff, and I have a group of mentees who are millennials, and they're in leadership positions. So I talk to them all the time about people coming at you this way because they're black folks and people. I remember watching the Malcolm X interview, and he was on TV, and the guys were coming at him and all this stuff, and they were saying, "Well, some of y'all are doing well." He said, "But let me tell you something. I'm going to give you a riddle here. What do your folks usually call a black man with a PhD?" And they said, "I don't know what." He said, "Nigga." Right? So people will come at you, and they wait for you to make one small, what they can call a misstep, and they want to take you down. So we have to understand they take you down if you get bent out of shape and you lose your cool. But if you stay strategic and don't get pulled into their baiting, now all of a sudden you destroy the whole case.
And then you become so emotional too. You get angry and all this kind of stuff. Right. So that's just a lack of control.
That's right.
But there's another term for that. What would you call that? If right now, I can say today, all right, it's June 14, 2025, and there's a big military parade today. I mean, I'm getting texts from people that are getting scared and nervous. Yeah. But it's a military parade. We have it. And so we get over it. But the thing is not to focus too much on it. And focus on how do you better your life and your surroundings. If you are someone in high school or in college, just make sure there's a lot of things changing. And I think what I'm leaning towards is make sure that whatever major you take, that you really, really understand it long term. Even though it's hard to predict what's out there, especially with AI. But, we have to try to always keep that in our minds. Things are changing, and things will change and continue to change. All right, so what do you think about that?
If somebody asked me, well, what did Walter just say? I would say, and what do you think? What he said, number one. But it's true. And one thing I used to always share with my students, and I got it from one of my brothers-in-law, who's an iconic educator in Western Pennsylvania. He told me when I was making the jump, because I worked in the television industry, different roles in different forms of communication strategies and all that stuff. So I was going to use my experience as a college educator, and he told me to prepare me. He said, never forget, the students don't care how much you know unless they know how much you care.
That's a good one.
That's so important. Yeah. So I would, I used to work with the college librarians, and I was also an accreditation auditor too. So I used to work with college librarians to formulate critical thinking training processes. One of the things we always emphasized was don't pick a major because it sounds good and somebody told you can make a lot of money. Right. Pick a major that corresponds to the kinds of things you want to be doing all day, kinds of things you're interested in, kinds of things you can sink your teeth into and get into it with your whole chest, right? Because if you're doing that, you're half the time you don't even feel like you're working, right? But you're making money from doing something you love to do anyway, right?
Well, that's what I try to drill into my kids. Well, not my grandkids now, but I drilled it into my kids. Do something that you enjoy doing and get paid for it.
That's right. So when you're doing that, now you're not going to lose motivation. They say a lot of the people who go to college can't tell what they want to do because they haven't looked inside themselves and really see what makes their heart sing, right? So look at that first, because if you do that, now you can invest your whole self into going above and beyond when somebody needs your help from your expertise, right? You can see that they need your assistance, and now you can listen to them and really help them in the way that they need. So when you're doing that, your life, you're not getting stressed out. Your life feels good to you, and you're not tied down to the money. A lot of folks end up in these high-paid jobs, but they hate what they do.
Yeah, I've been there.
And they're in prison. You feel like you're in prison, right? Because if you go to something else and you're starting from scratch, it'll be hard to find something that'll provide you with the same amount of resources, right? So that's stressful. I went through that too, right? So I did, in fact. I came from a single-parent household with my mom, and we were on welfare until I was 16. When my mom did eventually died, my inheritance was $1,500. And that was just from insurance policy, right?
Well, you know, you didn't have to use that for the funeral.
Right. Yeah, and that wasn't even enough.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, I understand.
So when you know you got to do it yourself, like you were saying earlier.
All righty. All right, Timothy.
Yeah.
So, in closing, what would you say to like I said, I think I may have mentioned this earlier because I'm getting a little confused because I got one, back to back.
Yeah.
And I may have asked this question earlier to you, but let me ask you again.
Okay.
Is that what should our young people be focused on now in terms of the environment that they're in and where they want to go? Where do they see themselves? Okay. But what would you talk about that a little bit? Because this is for the young folks too, primarily. Yeah. But the older people, what I understand, they pass it down.
Okay. I do a lot of work with young folks on this particular issue. That's what most of my guidance for my mentees is about. So understand that here's a very important thing. This is not just for young people, it's for older people too. Because the older people don't know this either. As human beings, we don't act on what we think. We act on what we feel. It's kind of like what Maya Angelou said when she said, people tend not to remember what you say, but they remember how you made them feel.
Oh, yes. Okay.
See, your action is derived from whether you feel emotionally resonant with the thing and connected to the thing in a positive way or a negative way. So if you feel connected in a positive way, you're motivated to engage with it. If you feel connected in a negative way, you're motivated to run from it or to destroy it. So young people need to realize you can't run away from the discomfort of dealing with the cognitive dissonance, the feelings that are contradictory inside yourself. You've got to go deeper into the rabbit hole. That's what the Matrix was really about, right? So you want to go deeper inside the rabbit hole to find out so you can reconcile those feelings. Don't run from it. A lot of the young people have been trained and gaslit to believe they can ignore the feelings or run from them. So they don't develop any wisdom and they don't develop skill in working through conflict. And young people need to really go down inside themselves and really always try to take responsibility. What am I contributing to the dynamic that's happening here? Now, take responsibility for that part. And also be able to tell, what am I responsible for, what are they responsible for, and be honest with self about that. And that's the place to start, because when you start there, now you get to see, am I resisting learning new things? Am I resisting accepting other people as they are and all that kind of stuff? Because people love to claim that they're open-minded.
Until the time comes where they have to.
Yes, that's right. One last thing. So when I used to have to teach the process of human perception within ourselves. There's 3 stages: selection, organization of stimuli that you brought into yourself, and interpretation, which is putting it together using hopefully critical thinking and drawing a conclusion based on your hopefully sound thinking. You only select to pay attention to something if you're motivated emotionally by, let's say you have to work on a project and you need that kind of information, right? Or you're familiar with it, so you always gravitate toward seeing the thing that way. Yeah. And so here's the thing I wanted to end with. We should always ask, but we're always growing, but you can stifle your own growth or you can accelerate it. Depending on how you answer these 2 questions, you should always be asking yourself. The first one is, before you draw a conclusion, you should really look at, do I have enough information from different sectors, different sources to draw a sound and accurate conclusion? And please be honest about that. And the second one is, am I truly open-minded, open-hearted enough to adjust if I find out that my hypothesis was wrong? Right. Yeah. And it should start young. And if you start that young and you keep it up, you'll find that you're a much happier person.
I tell you, one thing about being a podcaster is you get a chance to learn. And over the 6 years that I've been podcasting, I've learned a great deal from our guests. And that's the real benefit of, being a podcast or a position where you can talk to people with various types of knowledge, various backgrounds, and you learn to appreciate those people. All right, you really learn to appreciate life too, and you learn, especially when you encounter people like that, that you want to learn. If you don't know, you want to be a sponge. And I've been a sponge all my life, even though I've been retired 6 years. I'm still a sponge.
Yeah.
All right, and I tell my kids that you're going to learn something. I don't care if you live 100 years, you'll always be learning. On the 99th year, you're cognizant and stuff like that. Yeah. All right, so with that, I'm going to wrap it up. I want to thank Timothy Thompson. Or I should call you Dr. Thompson. Yes, I want to thank Dr. Thompson. How do we reach you if somebody subscribers or listeners want to reach out to you? Have any questions, or you don't want to be dealing with any?
I welcome that kind of thing. Would you like me to give my email address?
Yeah, whatever you're comfortable with.
Yeah, email is fine. Yeah, probably that's the best one.
That's the best one.
Yeah. So my email address is, I'll speak it out, shifutim@gmail.com. This I retired Kung Fu instructor too. So.
Oh yeah, you and Doc, y'all got that one.
Yeah. In fact, we both. He's done some training under my idol, who I've never met, and he knows my teacher, who's an icon in martial arts. So we were just talking about that together. But anyway, so my Shifu Tim is spelled S as in Sam, H as in Harry, I, F as in Frank, U like Master Shifu, and then Kung Fu Panda. I write Shifu Tim, so Tim, gmail.com.